right, and we are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first We Should Talk team live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Francesca. I am the 3D artist, character artist, and animator on the project. I'm based in Madison, Wisconsin, and tonight I am drinking a boxed red sangria. Because I'm extremely
I really appreciate that it's boxed specifically, because you know that's like just how we roll.
I know, I just want to be transparent with our audience here tonight.
We're not classy people. We avoid glass whenever possible. It's like
it's absolutely
boxes
true.
and plastic. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to let the rest of the team introduce themselves, and then we'll kick it off with some gameplay.
Yeah, so I'll go next. Hi, everybody. I'm Carol Mertz. I am the producer. I was one of the designers and one of the developers on the project. So I kind of did a lot of things. I was also one of the original writers, along with Jordan, on the alpha, which we'll talk about next Saturday, right? June 6th. Anyway.
Yeah.
So we'll get more into that later. But yeah, I'm based in St. Louis, Missouri now. I moved back from Brooklyn last September, and today I am drinking
oh no, it's invisible.
Pale Ale. It's invisible, but it is Omission Pale Ale because my guts are broken and I can't drink normal beer. So it is a fun little gluten-free substitute that is now invisible. It's censored. It's censored. This is for mature audiences, but it's still censored because thank you, Twitch.
Okay, I'll go next.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. I'm Nova, and I'm the artist. We Should Talk, and I'm currently based in Bangladesh. Well, currently I'm in the village, and I'm having too many electric outage, and I hope that I'll be online to and be in this live stream for a while.
Yeah, we're all like crossing our fingers.
What you drinking?
This is my drink. I just have a whole bottle of 7-Up, which is a shot.
Bangladeshi 7-Up.
That's awesome.
Basically gamer fuel.
That is gamer fuel. Because this is a game for gamers, if there ever was one.
Yeah?
Yeah? You know.
Alright. I'll go next. My name's Jordan Jones-Brewster. I am the narrative designer for We Should Talk. Currently based in Brooklyn, New York, born and raised. And I am drinking a Manhattan out of a Batman sippy cup. So, the finest of wares.
The most classic Jordan. I've had 2 sips of this beer and I already don't know words.
Yeah, this is going to go absolutely fantastic. I'm really excited.
This is gonna be good.
Yeah, but I want to say again, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We will be taking some questions from chat. Dinah is here. Oh my goodness.
Just came to say hello.
Hello, Dinah.
She had a hand in development in keeping us all sane.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
That's the first special guest appearance of the chat.
Oh, and she, I miss her so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so we're going to be jumping into gameplay and doing some developer commentary as we walk through some of the design decisions and just giving you some insight into the development of the game. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them in chat.
Right now, chat, I would like everybody to know, is just basically a Dinah fan club, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. Which is very exciting.
Yeah,
I'm here
you
for
might
it.
start seeing her whiskers pretty soon here. She really likes licking the webcam from behind, so you just see this little cat chin come over from the top.
Oh, I love her so much.
It's gonna happen. Anyway, we're here to play a game, right?
Yeah, I think just to kick us off, maybe Carol, if you want to give us like the little like elevator pitch of like what We Should Talk is, and just a little bit about like the team in general.
Absolutely. So We Should Talk is we call it a short form narrative game about the nuance of communication in relationships. So this is a game about choosing your words wisely, in that all of the sentences in the game that you can respond with are broken up into different pieces. and you can choose any combination of those pieces and it all makes sense, but they all may say something absolutely different than what you could have said. Like if you would have just shifted one piece, right? So it's very thoughtful. It's very kind of introspective, and so it's been a quite a process. It was originally concepted at NYU, where we were all in Brooklyn taking or studying for our MFA degrees at NYU Game Center. And this is what you're seeing now is after about 2 years of development. We started it in January of 2018.
Yep.
So it's about 2.5 years of development then. Yeah, so that's where we're at. That's the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're done,
and
right?
we're done.
We're done. Tag it up.
I wanted to say, so you can currently wishlist the game on Steam if you're interested in supporting us. It really helps us with visibility. And we are also live on Kickstarter, which is why we're doing this stream. So we're doing a series of streams as community goals. So we've actually unlocked all of them already, just because everyone has been fantastic in supporting the Kickstarter and getting the word out there. So yeah, we have 2 other live streams lined up in the coming weeks, so we'll hope you'll tune in for those as well. But yeah, please check out the Kickstarter, and please share it with folks you think might be interested in this game.
Everybody should be interested in introspective communication.
So I'm gonna go ahead and start jumping into gameplay. Yeah, and
Cool.
we'll just sort of walk through. Feel free to go off on like little design tangents and anything. So
You're telling me what we're looking at right now is a video game?
This sure is a video game. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump right in. So this is a fresh build, so we have not unlocked any of the endings. So you'll see these little like empty squares. So there's 9 possible endings in this game. Let's see which ones we get. I'm actually very curious.
Ooh, before we jump in, there's something that I want to point out that I love.
Yeah.
As you might find out, this game is set in a bar, and one thing that I love about this screen is the little cup stain on the napkin that the pen is on. It's like one of the favorite things I love looking at every time that the game's
Same. Like, this composition was such a labor of love on Nobo's part. Like, she would never say, like, yeah, I spent a week working on putting it together. But she put so much, like, I mean, look at the little, even like the little, like, water stains. There's like 2 little droplets on the triangular napkin on the right. It's just so much thought and effort was put into this.
Yeah, absolutely.
First view of the game to try to really pull you into that bar vibe, and I think it's just, it kind of floored us the first time we saw it. We were just like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Okay, so I'm hitting play. We are jumping in. Yeah, so I guess like, go for it. Yeah. Did you have something to say, Nova?
Oh no, fine.
Never
emoting.
So I guess like as I start getting into it, so Jordan, you mentioned a little bit about the setting of the game already, but I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about where this game is set and how we designed this environment.
Yeah, so the name of the bar that most of the game takes place in is called The Getaway, and it's a Brooklyn bar that young 20-somethings like to hang out with. And the reason that we kind of went with this setting partially is because it's super fun doing research for a game by going to several bars.
Yeah, we had a good time.
That is so. Like, hey, we're really tired. We should go do research.
So in the process, sometimes we were just like scoping out the area to see like what the bars look like. Sometimes we just spoke to the bartenders. We had some really good conversations with one bartender, I remember.
We did. It was at, where was that? That was the the bar at DeKalb Market, the downstairs bar at DeKalb Market. What is that called?
Understudy?
The Understudy,
right?
Yeah, the Understudy. That bartender was great. Yeah, it was so cool. They inspired a lot of our vibe too, like the lighting of the back of the bar and everything came a lot from spending time at the Understudy and really appreciating the thought and care that they put into their ambiance.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit as well about the sentence fitter and how we're crafting our dialogue choices.
So this came out of what? Weeks of iteration of coming up with ways that we could possibly design a mechanic that encourages a thoughtful relationship. The original idea behind developing the game was creating something that subverts transactional relationships in games. And we're like, well, what does that? Having conversations, getting to know people, expressing yourself. And so this came out of, how many prototypes did we do of like little mini mechanics?
So many.
At least 10, I think.
Yeah,
like,
10 to 15, where we were just doing rapid prototypes, like, because there were 6 of us on the team at the early on, and this was one of the prototypes. We were planning on doing a bunch of different mechanics, because every game designer just wants to put everything that they come up with in the game. And then we realized this one was just so good and so solid and so expressive that we just leaned into this and focused on this as our key mechanic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something we were thinking about from early on is how a lot of games focus on the building of relationships, and we also wanted to explore this aspect of maintaining a relationship, right? Of when you have existing relationships, how does that change how you might express yourself? So I think this is one of the first instances of that, where this is sort of where you're choosing how much information you want to give this person, right? If you want to refer to your girlfriend as she or Sam, like someone you know, or if you want to specifically say my girlfriend. So this choice in how you're expressing yourself, but also, the familiarity level with this character and how much information about yourself you want to give them.
Yeah, we spent some... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jordan. Oh no, Jordan's frozen! Oh no! I was gonna say, we spent a lot of time thinking very deeply about relationship psychology and thinking about what it means to use somebody's name, like you were saying, and thinking about what it means to use the term we as opposed to I when it comes to something like blame, or when it comes to saying something was good. Was it that I did something good? Was it that we did something good? Is it that you did? And we really took that into account. And I think Jordan, now that Jordan is unfrozen, they can talk a little bit more about the narrative side of that.
Yeah, I think the choice that Francesca was talking about a moment ago about saying Sam or my girlfriend or she is like a super important choice that it came to me that how important it was when playtesters would play the game, because that's the moment when people would stop and say, oh wait, maybe I just flirted with this person, maybe this happened, maybe this happened, but now this feels a little bit more serious. Now I have to kind of brace myself because I don't know what I'm in for.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do we want to talk to?
Yeah, this is the most obvious branch in the game, where this is where we tried to show your choices matter. Your choices are actually going to affect what happens. And so we give you the option to either talk to someone that you know, or if you go over and switch the second half there, you can talk to a stranger. And that decides which conversation is triggered next after you chat with your girlfriend. And so what should we do?
Let's go for the stranger.
Yeah. Do we want to let the chat decide?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Does anybody in chat have a preference? Do we talk to the stranger first, or do we talk to our friend over there?
I'm also remembering, when we started thinking about, all right, everyone wants to talk to the stranger.
Stranger. Stranger.
I was gonna say something that, as we were designing these characters and these different relationship dynamics, we talked a bit, within our team about reasons you would go to a bar, and how this game you can go to this fictional bar and you can be yourself, and you can interact with folks the way that you might interact with them in real life, but it also offers this fantasy, right, of what if I just go approach that stranger, which is something I personally I would never do in real life, but right now it's everyone wants to go talk to the stranger because there's that little bit of risk there, it's it's very tempting. So let's go have a drink with that stranger.
I'd just like to call out this really hilarious comment in chat.
Exactly, though.
Truly, video games now let me live out the fantasies I would never do. talk to strangers.
Which, yes.
Hard same.
Ooh,
So good.
there's another comment in the chat that I want to bring up. Someone's like saying that they're digging the songs, and the music was like a big conscious choice that like we put like a lot of time in fairly recently for the game, because the ambiance and feeling of that bar atmosphere is completely tied to like the music in a bar, and it was like super important for us to like get that right. Like Novo, for example, put in a lot of time like curating the songs that we would end up choosing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it like, yeah, that was all like a very thoughtful process by Nobo, the aesthetic queen of the game. You know, thinking very carefully about that vibe, and it's just it's so great to hear that other people are hearing that and appreciating it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Sam and about this character. And I want to also talk a little bit about specifically, if Jordan, you want to talk about like how you chose this specific interaction or dialogue as an introduction to this character.
Well, damn importantly, it's a character that like kind of interrupts your time at the bar every once in a while to text you, and they're your partner at home. And the reason that this is the interaction that I wanted to start with is because it needed to happen after you spoke to the bartender already, because you make choices and you start deciding who you want to be, and then partway into that conversation is when you find out other aspects of your life. You find out that you have a girlfriend waiting for you at home. So that girlfriend needs to be like, I feel super welcoming. And the way that she talks to you, like, actually one of my favorite lines is like, we have your favorite noodle soup for din din, because that's the most adorable thing someone can say.
Slurping nudes.
Slurping
Who
nudes.
doesn't want to slurp nudes with a hot GF?
So
we got some pushback on that line.
We did.
we did get first back on slurping nudes, but that was a hard. If we didn't slurp nudes in this game wouldn't exist.
Yeah,
I'm
gotta
saying.
slurp the nudes.
Putting my foot
It's
down
just-
on that one.
I think the people who gave us the most pushback are folks who have not experienced this kind of relationship, right? They were mostly like mentors and advisors, actually, who probably fell into relationships pre-texting and like didn't get to experience
yeah,
that
that's
whole
true.
like sexting, texting, playful like experience that we all know being in our 20s and 30s. And so I think that's probably why we feel so strongly about it, is because it feels true to our lives. And, they felt so strongly about it because it didn't feel true to theirs. They thought it felt twee or overly cutesy, which, some of us just live that way. Leave us alone, dude. I almost cursed, but we didn't talk about whether or not we could curse.
It's a mature stream. I think it's acceptable.
We did
I think
curse
it's
in the
okay.
game.
Yeah.
We did have a comment or a question in the chat for Novo, which I'm actually super interested in. So Quirk asks, what color palettes do you go through when trying to design the game? Because like this aesthetic is so strong, and I remember that was something that we spent a really long time honing in on.
Actually, I wanted to talk about.
Oh, you're cutting out a little bit. Your audio dropped. Can you repeat that?
It is something that I wanted to talk. It's
It's just the Bangladeshi internet is just really doesn't want you to talk about your color.
Nobo, I would say maybe if you want to like turn off or mute the game video for a second, just so that there's less going on your end.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes,
that
we
sounds
can.
better.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault.
I know that this was something that we had to back in time when we made the alpha game, that we wanted something very neon-y. And actually, I wanted to talk about it in the next live stream. We'll go through the alpha build. That way, I can just like talk about the differences that we made and how.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we iterated a lot, and I think part of this was going to the bars and seeing the different sort of atmospheres. So like we went to some that were like this one's intended to be a little more modern, and then we looked at some that were more sort of like rustic looking, I guess, like more industrial, I guess, like rustic industrial, and just like we also spent some time observing you know, the different aesthetics of those bars and how they sometimes encourage different behaviors between like patrons at the bar as well. And I think that's something that's interesting to think about. It's like, what type of bar do you go to when you want to like approach strangers? What type of bar do you go to when you want to drink by yourself? Yeah, so I think that's an interesting thing that influenced this as well.
Yeah. One thing that's super cool is that long after we've decided on the color palette and like we went through the research and Noah kind of like hammered it down, we learned that like the year that we started developing the game, this color palette was like the color palette of the year.
Oh, yeah. Like when we found out NeoCab was a thing, we were like, "Oh my god!"
I was really excited.
It was exactly like our game, but it's like a totally different kind of game. But like we're all just so obsessed with.
I love that. I love that aesthetic so much.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about this decision. Sorry, so I've been sitting here for a moment. But this is I think one of the first moments where you sort of get to either like accept or push back on something that Sam is saying more directly. So Sam is saying like, oh, like, you know, I consider you to be my family, and depending on how you're interpreting this relationship or how you might feel, maybe we find that folks project a lot onto this game as well, right? Like if you're playing this as yourself, depending on the status of your own relationship, you might respond to a comment like this in different ways. So we can say like, oh, like you're really important to me as well, or we can say like, oh, you're like coming on a little strong there.
Yeah, this is definitely a turning point for players when they basically decide, do I want to go lawful good, or chaotic evil, or, you know, try to find some neutral in between. And it's really fascinating watching players make that decision in this moment.
I'm gonna be nice to Sam. I like Sam.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest thing for a lot of us. I mean, one of the really interesting things about watching play testers play this is like watching like the visceral response of the realness of some of these things. Like some of the, and Jordan, you might be able to talk about this a little bit more in depth in terms of the narrative, but like watching different kinds of people respond very differently to Sam. I know we've even had this conversation with our publisher, like shout out to Whitethorn Games, but like, you know, the CEO of Whitethorn has very strong opinions about Sam. And those very strong opinions are very different from the very strong opinions that somebody else is likely to have about Sam. And I just love kind of like dissecting the psychology behind that and like watching people recoil in terror and fear at her, you know, at her, I hesitate to say the word clinginess, but at her codependency, you know, at her need for reassurance. Yeah. Where others just want to like pet her and tell her everything's going to be okay. And it's frankly, to me, one of the most interesting parts of watching people play this.
Yeah, and it's a good note at how people engage in their relationships, because that codependency that you're mentioning is like neither bad nor is good at a very medium level. It's just sometimes people can like that in a relationship and sometimes can hate it. And the reason that particular choice and that interaction happens early on is that it allows the player to immediately project themselves into the type of the relationships that they want to have. So you'll have people that immediately go ew with that relationship, or aw, right at that moment.
Yeah, I think this is also a moment I think players have had some strong reactions to. So Sam making a comment about like, you could probably use some exercise, and I think like there you have the option here to respond in more of a like a joking way, or you know, if this is something that you respond negatively to, we allow you to do that as well.
I'd like to talk about this moment actually, because though the game does have ways for you to respond negatively and like take offense to this statement, that was a thought process that I didn't think most people would engage in when having this moment. It was one of those things that I learned through playtesting that people responded in a way differently than I kind of planned for them to. Because I imagined it just being that playful teasing that some people go through, but more often than not, when I was watching playtesters, the almost universal reaction was like, "You're stepping over the line here, Sam. You're kind of poking at something that hits a little deep for me." And
Yeah, absolutely.
I love keeping it in the game for that reason.
I know I personally get annoyed
Yeah.
because so many times, but I'm just like, I get irritated.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like you.
Yeah, and I think like this is also something, that, I think right now if someone said that to me, I would be like, I would respond in a more joking manner, but there are points in my life where I would have responded really negatively because I was used to having people say like negative things about my body or my weight. So there's also like there's a lot of projecting, I think, and depending on like your personal situation, you can respond to a lot of these situations in really different ways.
Yeah.
All right.
We have a question in the chat. When writing, was it difficult to write interactions that were potentially outside your own relationship experiences? And the answer to that is yes, it was. Because this game is pretty personal to the team, and a lot of what comes out of it is kind of directly based off of experiences of many members in the team, but some of it goes outside of that realm. Because I wanted to create an environment that like many people could relate to in some different ways. So the biggest part about testing out those scenarios, and some we might even see, like this scenario that we're about to go in, which we'll talk into a little bit of detail when we get into it, had a lot to do with playtesting, talking to members of the team in specific detail, and just talking to people about how they feel about certain things that are said, or if they feel like, I went through this and I don't really have anything to say here. Finding out why those people felt that way, so I could really make sure that that could be represented in a game in a decent way.
Yeah.
We also just, again, research, so much research, and just talking to each other. Like, we had some very, very intense conversations with each other throughout this process of really diving into our own experiences, talking to other people, because we knew that we wanted this game to represent all of our own experiences and also, be representative of experiences that we don't often get to see in games. And we wanted to be true to those while also being very respectful. And I think that that's such a wonderful aspect of this, is that it draws from so many different experiences in this single, 20-minute game, that almost everybody who plays it sees some aspect of themselves in it, which is a really, really great feeling.
Yeah. One positive memory that I have from the development of this game is early on, when we first started making this, we knew that this was going to be like a personal and potentially emotional game. So the entire team at the time went to Francesca's house, and we got pretty drunk, and we just laid everything out on the table. We just spoke about it all.
Got raunchy.
It did get a little raunchy, but I think that was, as y'all are saying, like, I think that was really important in us, because we had only known each other for less than a year when we started working on this project, and I think that was a really important way for us to, feel comfortable and give ourselves permission in sort of this like teamwork environment to really share personal experiences, so that we knew what subject matter we felt comfortable exploring in the game as well. Drunk and raunchy have been flagged by the auto mod.
But you're clear, it's good.
Okay, so moving on, before I go any further, let's talk about Jimmy. Because I think this is a really interesting character, and also players' reaction to this character changes drastically, I think. I'd love to just talk about Jimmy for a minute.
One thing that I like to point out is this interaction here, the choice that we're at right now, is the moment that I sniggered to myself and laughed the most without the entire team not knowing what's going on. Where
really?
for like 3 or 4 minutes, I was just laughing at the concept of the term "daddy daycare," and I had to calm it down to show it to everybody. and it's my favorite thing in the entire game.
It gets such a reaction.
Like
And they're all just like, I know too much about you, dude.
it
like
does.
already. I know.
Absolutely, right? It's like you immediately kind of get a sense for who this character is, but also like who he's trying to be, which I think is really interesting, right? It's like he's the kind of person who is on a dating app and he's like, I want to introduce myself as Daddy Baycare, and like that's how I want to present myself, which I think tells so much about the character.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question in chat that I'd love to talk about. It's how did you approach figuring out if your vision was doable? Because of like it blows this person's mind that the conversation variety all functions just so well. And that was, I just remember that being such a huge topic of conversation early on. Of like there were people who told us that it wasn't possible. And we're like, no, like it's gonna be hard, but it's totally possible. And like, I remember, and maybe we can talk a lot more about this during the retrospective live stream on June 6th, but because Jordan and I were both writing early on at the time, and it was so exhausting while we were still trying to train our brains to write this way. But we were both just so hecking determined to make it work because we didn't want anybody saying this brilliant design idea wasn't possible. And also our developer at the time, Jack, created a tool for us to use to like plug in all the possible responses so that we could more easily see them visually and be able to determine like, okay, are these coherent sentences? If not, how can I change these out and stuff? So we did have some tools to help us troubleshoot a little bit, but yeah, the entire idea of like, is this absolutely wild, harebrained design idea possible? That was just, I think, pure gumption. And us just trying to prove something to the world that we could do it. Yeah, honestly.
This part of the conversation with Jimmy is like actually like one of the ones that comes up a little bit less often, but this is an actual particularly personal experience for me, where this isn't my particular dating app experience to a T, but it's how I feel like the experience of being on a dating app was when I was single at that time, and just feeling the idea that I have to kind of like put up different faces to be on this, but it never really truly represented who I was. And it's kind of the struggle that like a lot of people go through, especially when dating in a city as big as New York.
Yeah.
Jimmy is such an interesting character. Like, I don't want to get too deep into like where he can go, because he is just, I think he's one of the most fascinating characters in the game. And when, again, we've got so much more backstory on that particular like stranger persona in the retrospective, but like I love where he's come and like where he is now, because it's just such an interesting narrative exploration, like as a player, knowing that I can go back and really, you know, experience Jimmy.
Experience Jimmy.
Carol.
So actually, I realized I did pull in an image of our schedule. So I'm just gonna flash that up on the screen really quick. So this is our schedule. So we are going to be doing a developer retrospective live stream on June 6th. I believe it's a Saturday. Is that right? I think that's correct. I know it's a weekend because we'll be streaming in the afternoon. Yeah. So we'll be talking about the alpha version of the game. And as I'll switch back now. So as Carol said, there was a lot of process in figuring out like how we wanted to deal with this character, or the different directions that like a conversation with a stranger at a bar could go. And I think this one, it took a lot of iteration on our part. But yeah, so tune in for that. It's going to be really fun to talk about.
Yeah.
This is one of those conversations that where it starts to get pretty heavy, and Sam's like insecurities and codependencies start to shine a little bit stronger and test like what the player wants out of this interaction. And I want to preface this by saying, like, this isn't one of those games that has like a right or wrong or a true ending or good ending.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that was really important to us.
yeah, the truest ending is the one that feels right for you.
Yeah, 100%. And I love that about this, is that like everybody's like, did I get the good ending? I'm like, do you feel like you did? Like,
Yeah, I think that's so interesting.
That's up to you, my friend. Like, did you get the good ending? Does it feel good?
Yeah, and I think
right?
that goes into this idea of like transactionality that we wanted to get away from, right? Of just like you know, that conversations and interactions in games can have a right and a wrong outcome, that you're trying to like kind of game the system to get that result. So I think it confuses people at first. Yeah, but I don't know.
I want a good game.
Yeah, I want to be a good gamer.
Girlfriend.
You can't min-max the relationship.
Yeah.
Right, Dana? Right?
Dana's like, why are you yelling?
She wants to be a really good gamer. She tries so hard. There's another question in chat.
Yep.
Jordan, I think this is the one for you. Is how did you decide how many scenarios you wanted to include?
That was one of the hardest parts of the development of this game, because when I got into the zone of like really writing, like the mechanic made sense to me and I was going in differently, I had the urge to create way too many branches and so
Yeah.
really became a problem, like pretty fast. And once I got an understanding of how long it took me to write these paths in detail instead of just outlining them, it really toned down where I wanted to go, but gave me the freedom to make it feel as deep of a well as it ended up being. So it really came to the production process and how long it took for certain things to write in the time that we had, because we had a fairly tight production schedule that we wanted to stick to, and writing was a big part of learning how to write was a big part of that.
It was very much about scope, and I blame myself for a lot of that. Is like, hey, we gotta get this finished like now.
Yeah, but we need that.
Yeah. I think even on a like a broader level, like taking the lens out a little bit farther, like looking at how many conversations there are, period.
Yeah.
You know, like how many people there are in the bar, and you know how many conversations there are on the phone. That was a very early decision. Like that didn't change much, because that was simply scope. We wanted enough like broadness of interaction, you know, like a representation of the different kinds of relationships you might find in a bar. And yeah, a little bit tropey in that way, in that like, you know, it's your ex and like a stranger and like the cute bartender, but also representative of reflection on like how do you communicate into how do you communicate in these different, you know, relational situations. Like these are very differing intimacy levels, and we knew that we wanted to represent that, and so we really just were like, how can we trim this down to as few as possible while still being as encompassing as possible. And so we landed on 3 plus conversations with the girlfriend in between each.
Dinah's like, pay attention to me also.
She's just like trying to, so I'm using my MacBook Pro here, and she just keeps trying to like the touchpad, which just messes with everything. It screws up my volume, it screws up the brightness, it's bad. So if you ever see my arm like this, it's like me just gently pushing a cat away.
My other dog is also here. She is 50 pounds, so she cannot be in my lap. But this is Dawn. She's our current foster, and she is a comfortable 10 pounds, but it's also very warm, so I might put her down in a minute.
Started to get warm in the Midwest.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I want to talk about one of the lines that just came up in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I felt needed to be in the game, and it was written down somewhere, and it was just a moment of figuring out where to plug it in, and I just don't want to be left behind, you know? Because I feel like in a long-term relationship, no matter what, that interaction will happen at some point. When you're trying to figure out who you are, what your future is, and what the future of the relationship is, that is a thing that I think anyone with like experiences in long-term relationships or long-distance relationships even can like relate to, and that's a very real fear that Sam has that I wanted to use to let her be a little bit more grounded into the story, that make her feel like she's codependent, but it's very easy to understand why.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is also a point where, players get enough insight into Sam, and as you said, like her insecurities and her thought process, where I feel like at this point in the game, like I started relating to Sam a little bit. At this point, I had been playing the protagonist as me, but then I was like, oh, but I also, feel represented, or like feel, I identify with some of like Sam's worries as well. Yeah, so I think that can be interesting as well. Let's see, how do we want to respond to this?
Oh, this is where it gets real. Like, there are ways to really just wreck it right now. Like, this is a very intense thing that you can respond to, and this is another one of those examples of where we look at the relationship psychology and like words that you can use in a relationship to place blame or to redirect emotion, essentially. And so this is I wish you should. I mean, I've had partners, and I remember like having this conversation with Jordan, like I really feel strongly that we put in the words "you should," because I have such a strong response to hearing those words. I hate hearing those words. And for me, I know that we pulled a lot of my experience and put that into Sam. And for me, if I heard "you should do something" over a text message, I would just respond so like frustrated and so feeling just utterly deflated. That why are you telling me what I should and shouldn't do right now, or how I should or shouldn't feel? And that was I just remember that being a huge part of that conversation of like, how is this going to manifest in the narrative?
This is my favorite line in the game.
Yeah. Speaking of Sam being a representation of Carol, sometimes anxiety can be a real turret, though. It's like the most Carol thing I can see.
Yeah.
Try not to let turds control you, hurt you.
Yeah.
Come between us.
Did I write this line? I forget.
You did.
Yeah,
I wrote this line.
This was the Carol line.
All the worst lines in the game I wrote. I wrote the sexting conversation. I wrote the turds line. I'm pretty sure I wrote the 5 tiny shot glasses. The grenadine and the 5 tiny shot glasses.
Yeah.
That's a carryover from the early days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wrote all the mean lines. Somebody in the chat asks, is there a button to go home, because this game is already making me super nervous. And we, that's super valid. It's a tough game, and that's why we decided to make it short. It's a 20-minute game. We expect people to play it through in one sitting, but you can pause. There's an escape button, and Francesca, if you just want to show that really quickly, you can just pause and quit. And you can walk away and take a break, and you can come back. But yeah, we know that it gets heavy. It's definitely an experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think even when we've demoed at events, which isn't often an environment where you feel comfortable being super intimate or emotional, and as we said, like, this is a short form game, so usually it takes about 20 minutes to play through, and we've had people become very emotional, just demoing at events. Yeah, so that's been really powerful, I think.
It's a game that asks its players to be a little bit more vulnerable, which can carve multiple types of results out of a person. Some people can like respond with laughter and kind of trolliness, and some can get really emotional themselves. But it kind of needs to be short for that reason, or else it like risks overwhelming the player, I think.
That on top of the fact that it is a literal puzzle, every response that we had to write. It is so taxing. It's as taxing to write as it is to play, for many reasons, if not more so, probably more so, because you're diving into so many different aspects of yourself and of the people that you care about, on top of the fact that you're trying to create these coherent puzzle pieces that all fit together.
One question in the chat is, how did the name for the game finally get decided on?
This is a fun
And,
story, actually. Yeah.
This is really good. And
And-
we actually need to make a tweet about this
Yeah.
because I feel like people would appreciate it.
So if you want to hear a little bit more about this, on June 1st at 3:15 Central, I'll be doing a talk at Narrowscope, where I actually do talk about the name a little bit. But for a little sneak about that, we went through a lot of names early on as we were deciding what the name for this game should be. We should talk is what we ended up on, but there was just talk. I mean, let's just talk, or should we talk? There's
I mean, there was a list. We should probably look this up for the record.
Yeah.
This was done during Studio 2. My God, that moment.
So long ago.
That moment when Frank Lance, the director of the NYU Game Center, sat down and looked at our game, and he was like, this needs just a catchy title.
Yeah.
You know, something quick. He was like,
So I remember he actually asked us to go through our text messages and be like, what was the most recent text that you sent that was like under 5 words or something? And then from there we got into a discussion of like, what are things that you could receive as a text message that would like inspire emotion, right? Or like make you respond in like a very like powerful way. And I think like, yeah, if someone texts you, we should talk, that just like strikes fear into your heart.
Yeah.
he said those 3 words to us because it was actually Frank that came up with the words "we should talk" as the title, because he's a titling genius. I mean, Universal Paperclips, come on.
Yeah.
But as soon as we heard that, we were just like, oh God, yes, that's so obvious, so good. It's just perfect. And we've kept it ever since, and it's just been it strikes fear into people's hearts when they hear the title.
Yeah.
They know exactly what it's about. Yeah.
So do we want to talk about this character, Dante, a little bit?
Yeah.
Dante's my second favorite character in the game. I think my favorite character is Jimmy. But Dante is one of the characters that I think I just had the most fun with writing. His backstory is really funny to me, where he just loves really strange, experimental off Broadway theater. But I feel like that's the most Brooklyn person you can find in a bar, like that looks like this these days, you know. But it comes with the emotional weight of him being your ex from a time that you were a different person, clearly. And this is a moment right here where I get serious, where, you know, what happens when your ex comes up to you in a bar that you haven't seen in a long time and starts reminiscing on the end of your relationship? Who does that? Like, who is the type of person that comes to that?
Oh no. Yeah, and I think like this is from early on, like we were talking a little bit about how you know, we looked at couples therapy and like communication, you know, from those sort of like exercises and thought process, and like this is a very classic one of like, you know, if we want to say someone made a bunch of dumb mistakes, was it you, was it me, was it us? And I think like that distinction completely changes whether this is an accusation, whether it's a self-reflection, whether it's like, you know, something we were in together. So I find this really interesting, even though it's just like, you know, you're swapping one word.
And it is so dramatically. No, go ahead, Nobo.
Sorry. I know I always pick...
We?
No,
You cut out. Yeah, we.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel less guilty about everything else
Yeah.
between me and you.
I like, there are options on that one too, though, because like it's anywhere from, you know, we made dumb mistakes to we were really young. I don't remember what the other one was, Jordan, but like it's just a really like real reflection on why a relationship may not have turned out the way that you expected it to.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this conversation, is because I'm still friends with like the vast majority of the people that I've dated, and I find myself having these kinds of conversations pretty often because it's fun to reflect on memories. And so like I just really like the realness of that, and the idea of like being able to dive into those memories and be able to like kind of explore that together, while still, you know, in some cases you might, you know, pursue some feelings, and in other cases you might just be able to, you know, keep things friendly. And I think that that's a really interesting aspect of that particular conversation.
We've hit a moment in the conversation that like answers a little bit of one of the questions that got in the chat. Was it hard to give characters a voice or a style that was distinct from each other? And I want to bring that up for this particular moment because I think near the end of the biggest chunk of our development cycle for the writing process, the biggest conversation in my memory is how is Sam supposed to talk? How does Sam text you? Does Sam like use full sentences? Does Sam use like shorthand? Does she capitalize at the beginning of her sentences? And Sam was the character that I feel like was the most difficult to form that style around because if in relation to the other characters of the game, she's the only person that you don't see. So the way that she talks kind of has to be the most expressive in a specific way. But the reason that we went for the style that she talks with in chat in the text is because texting is a little bit different from how you talk in real life, and we wanted to get the feeling that like we're talking casual, but you can tell the difference of when things get serious or not based off of when she decides to use punctuation, when she decides to start using capitalizations in her letters, and when she starts to use slang or not. It was I think the decision on the end to start really helping define who her character ended up being.
Yeah, I remember that being a pretty big like conversation between the two of us, and I think that was one of the only times we argued throughout development was like what her texting style was, you know.
It was like the biggest major disagreement that we had for a while.
Yeah, and I think that just means that we cared deeply about her personality, and we wanted to make sure that it felt human. And I am so happy with where it ended up. I think that like exactly what you just described is just something that like it feels so powerful and it feels so human and it feels so real, and that's part of what I think gets people crying by the end of the game is because it doesn't feel forced and it doesn't feel fake, and it yeah, I don't know. Oh they said it. They said it. But yeah, and yeah, I Jack in the chat is saying the slang used is a cool snapshot of the time in that age range, and also I think a really cool snapshot of the time of development.
Yeah,
you know, this represents a very specific time of our lives, and it represents a very specific era of the world, and we're not trying to hide that at all. And even in some of the conversations, we use some not super topical things, but some fairly topical things.
Yeah.
Where, you know, if you play this in another 5 years, it's definitely gonna feel like a product of its age.
Yeah.
Which I think is fascinating about it. I think is going to be really interesting to come back to and reflect on in time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is it.
I would love to have other people give input here because I don't want to make a decision. How are we feeling at this point?
You don't want to end everything. This is the turning point. You got to make. But what's interesting, and I think we keep saying turning point, this is a big point in the conversation. Nothing that you choose will ultimately affect the ending necessarily. Everything that you choose affects the ending. And what I mean by that is that like there is no branch that funnels you into a specific ending. It's your tone throughout the game factors into what calculation winds up spitting out your particular ending, which sounds very mathematical, but ultimately we're trying to make it feel more human because of that it's not just like one specific choice that you make ruins everything or changes everything. It's that we're calculating very consciously the tone that you're using, the way that you're responding. We're seeing it and we're factoring that in, and that's Sam is seeing it. Sam is factoring it in. And ultimately, Sam is the one who's making the decision at the end of the game. And that's another aspect of it that I think just makes it feel that much more real, is it's not like you can just be like, well, I want this ending, and so I'm going to say this thing. It's like, even we struggle to get a particular ending that we want.
Yeah.
We know the tone that we need to take, but we don't. Oh, this is.
I like this one a lot.
Is this the happy ending, the happy-go-lucky?
It's one of them.
Yeah.
You also hit one of the rare one option spinners.
Yeah.
The game. It stays mainly for this is an ending sequence, as you might see.
Yeah. Spoilers.
And because after you hit a certain point in talking with someone, like eventually there is kind of only one way a conversation can go, and this is the way that ours did.
Yeah.
You realize that your relationship needed quality time to flourish, so you start making an effort to go on dates. Your first one is to an off-Broadway play starring a familiar face.
And that is Dante wearing a jar of peanut butter.
Good. Looking good, Dante.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, that's us. All those people are wonderful people, and we love them. And we also love all of you. Thank you all for coming to hang out with us and chat.
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in.
It was so great and a lot of fun to like look back and reflect. What are you giggling for now?
Yeah, I think I was expecting us to maybe work through 2 playthroughs, but that took an hour. Yeah, that took an hour to work through that. I think we went off on some really interesting tangents, and it's been a lot of fun to like reminisce even about just like the title or like how we made certain design decisions. So that's been a lot of fun. So I do want to say thank you everyone for tuning in and going on this little journey with us. I'm going to flash the schedule again really quickly. So we are going to be streaming again on June 6th. We'll be doing a developer retrospective live stream where we'll be taking a look at the alpha version of We Should Talk and discussing, how we went through updating and how we decided what we wanted to change. And then also on June 9th, Carol and Jordan are going to give a seminar. Do you guys want to tell us about that?
Jordan, do you want to share about this?
Sure. So we wanted to do a talk last year at an event called Wordplay, which spoke about the design of the sentence spinner and what that meant to the development of the game and what our intentions were going into. So this seminar is going to be a little bit of a retrospective, a little bit of a design discussion of what the sentence spinner was to us, how we decided on it, how it affected the development process, and what came out of it for this game.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you also have a Narrascope talk coming up on June 1st, which is not related to our live streams, but is related to We Should Talk, in that you're going to be talking about something similar, right?
Yes, it is also about the sentence spinner, but it's called Designing Intimacy Through Modularity and Anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really excited.
It's going to be great.
So that'll be coming up on June 1st, which as of recording is this coming Monday, I'd like to say.
Yeah. I closed
To double
my
check, I have
calendar,
no
'cause
idea
I'm
what day
trying
it
to,
is.
Yeah. But yes, and all this, we're doing all of these live streams, I just want to mention, because of our Kickstarter that's happening right now, because we broke through all of our community goals for our Kickstarter, and this was a celebration of, this particular one was a celebration of getting 350 backers. We're now up to like 460 something, or maybe even more than that at this point, which is just incredible. Like, that is more people than I can imagine in a room right now, because we are in a global pandemic. So we should not get into a room together to celebrate, and that's why we're doing these live streams.
I can't even imagine that many people.
So we can hang out. It's just so many people. It's great. And we cannot thank you all enough for helping to support us while we're making this final push toward launch. It's a scary time. For many of our team, it's our first game. For all of us, this is a very important game to us. It's very personal. And this, like, the fact that it evolved from a student project, you know, I don't think any of us thought that we were ever going to be releasing it commercially. And the fact that we've got so many people supporting us and encouraging us and just cheering us on toward the finish line has been just a really moving experience for all of us.
Yeah.
And so having you all here, having you all hanging out in chat, having you all watching this, you know, if you're watching the video on demand later on, it means a lot that you care about the game and you're excited to learn about our process and you're excited to get to know us as the developers. Because it is a personal game and we love that, you know, people get to see inside and get to know us and get to experience the game that much more intimately, and that they hear, you know, where it came from. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And with that, we're gonna wrap up for today. But yeah, so we will be back next Saturday for another live stream. So please tune in. And please check out the Kickstarter. Please wishlist on Steam. Those are the best ways to support us right now in our development of the game. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Bye
you
bye.
all. And thank you, Nobo, for staying up until 6 a.m.
Yeah, thank you.
Nobo has not slept. Everybody give a round of applause.
Nobo, go to
Nobo
sleep.
for being awake at 6 a.m. to film this live stream.
Thank you, Nobo.
Blessed. Hashtag blessed. You're amazing. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.